They laughed at you, dismissed you, called you crazy, delusional, paranoid. They waved off your warnings, scoffed at your insight, and convinced themselves that you didn't know what you were talking about. Your words won't leave them alone. Every sign, every event, every downfall, one by one, reality is proving you were right all along. They replay your voice in their minds, trying to convince themselves that it's all just a coincidence. But they know better. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Jesus declares in Luke chapter 8, verse 17, "The truth is merciless. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't ask if they're ready. It reveals itself when the time is right, whether they like it or not. And right now, the time has come. The signs they ignored, the energy they laughed at, the gut feelings they suppressed, it's all hitting them at once. They can't unsee it. They can't unhear your voice echoing through their regrets. They remember exactly what you said. They remember the warnings, the insight, the truth you tried to give them. And the worst part, they remember how they treated you, how they dismissed you, how they rolled their eyes when you spoke, how they whispered among themselves about how ridiculous you sounded. Now, those same people, they sit in silence. Because everything you said is happening, the people they trusted, showing their true colors. The situations they swore would never change, falling apart. The decisions they defended, leading them straight to ruin. You don't even have to say, "I told you so," because they already know. They feel it every time the consequences hit. They see it every time another piece of their illusion crumbles. They hear it in the quiet moments when their own thoughts turn against them. Your words are no longer just words. They are echoes. Echoes of the truth they ignored. Echoes of the wisdom they rejected. Echoes of you, and they can't escape it. Not now, not ever. You warned them, not once, not twice. More times than you should have. You saw the cracks forming while they were busy admiring the paint. You saw beyond the illusion, but they refused to listen. They followed charisma instead of character, chose deception over discernment, lust over loyalty, status over substance. It's all falling apart. The lies they believed, the promises they clung to, the illusions they wrapped themselves in, shattered. The job they thought would never fail, collapsing. The relationship they swore was unbreakable, in ruins. The trend they followed blindly, destroying their peace. They thought they were secure, thought they had figured it out. They laughed at your warnings, called you dramatic, negative, too cautious. But you weren't being negative. You were being right. They wanted to believe in the fantasy, the fairy tale, the carefully crafted illusion that made them feel powerful, important, untouchable. But illusions don't hold weight. They don't survive the storm. And now they're left standing in the wreckage, searching for something solid to hold on to. But there's nothing left. The people they trusted, gone. The promises they believed, broken. The path they swore was leading them somewhere great, a dead end. You are untouched because you saw it coming. You knew that truth outlives the lie. That stability is never built on deception. That if something requires blindness to believe in, it was never real to begin with. And now they see it too. But it's too late. They're scrambling, panicking, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But illusions don't leave behind anything worth saving. They chose the lie, and now the truth is choosing them. They know better. You weren't trying to control them. You were trying to save them. You gave them the knowledge that could have spared them from this downfall, but they rejected it, mocked it, dismissed it. They thought they knew better. Now the pain of knowing they could have avoided all of this is something they carry in silence. You don't need an apology. You don't need them to say, "You were right." You already know because you can feel it. The weight of their regret lingers in the air when they see you. When they see you thriving, when they see you standing untouched, unbothered, unshaken by the disaster that is consuming them. It burns them because they remember how they spoke to you, how they dismissed your warnings, how they looked at you with arrogance, condescension, certainty, as if you were the one who didn't understand. That same certainty is gone, replaced by silent shame. You don't need to hear them say it. Their actions say it for them. They hesitate before speaking your name. They look away when you walk into the room. They avoid conversations that would force them to admit the truth. But the truth is there. You can feel it in the way they linger a little too long on your words now, in the way they hesitate before dismissing you, in the way they wish they had listened. And it haunts them, because they could have had peace, they could have had wisdom, they could have had protection, but instead they have regret. And regret is a heavy thing to carry. You carry nothing because you let them make their choice. And now they have to live with it. You were the first to say it, the first to see it, the first to know the truth before anyone else dared to acknowledge it. And what did they do? They dismissed you, called you extreme, called you paranoid, called you crazy. They laughed at your words, scoffed at your insights. You weren't qualified. You weren't credible. You weren't someone they needed to take seriously. Now, the very same things you were mocked for are being repeated by leaders, professionals, and experts, the very people they blindly trusted. And suddenly, it's not crazy anymore. Now, it's wisdom. You watch as the same people who ridiculed you now nod in agreement when someone else says the exact same thing. They repost it, quote it, call it groundbreaking. But where was that energy when it was coming from you? Where was that respect when you were the one speaking? That's how the cycle works. First, they ignore you. They roll their eyes, pretend they didn't hear you, act like your words carry no weight. Then, they mock you. They laugh. Call you delusional, make it a joke so they don't have to face the truth. Then, they realize you were right. And suddenly the laughter stops. They start paying attention. They start seeing what you saw. But by then, it's too late. And finally, they pretend they knew all along. They repeat the very words they mocked, but with a twist, to make it seem as though they were the ones who uncovered the truth. They want to erase the fact that you were the one who saw it first. Because admitting you were right would mean admitting they were blind. And their pride won't allow that. You don't need their validation. You don't need their credit, because you already won. Not by arguing, not by forcing them to see, but by knowing the truth speaks for itself. You don't have to chase recognition, because those who once ridiculed you are now quietly taking notes. They won't say it out loud, but you can feel it. They know exactly where they heard it first. Hello, chosen one. Look at your life. Now look at ours. Back at your life. Now back at ours. Sadly, you're not in the obsidian inner order, but you could be. Picture this. Weekly group calls with 450 plus chosen ones, recorded and available anytime for your enlightenment. Our private Discord, it's not just active, it's alive, buzzing with ideas, breakthroughs, and that unstoppable chosen energy. Oh, and for you romantics out there, welcome to Chosen Singles, where soulmates meet under cosmic alignments, not cheap pickup lines. And if that's not enough, Star Chamber members unlock exclusive interviews with bona fide targeted individuals who face the darkest trials and survive to tell the tale. Plus, our video specials, too bold, too raw, too spicy for YouTube. This isn't just a community, it's a revolution of soul and spirit. Look at your DMs. Now back at me, the link to join. It's in the description. Don't just swipe right on destiny, claim it. The obsidian inner order. Smell like ascension, feel like magic, live like a chosen one. You feel it. Their eyes, their hesitation, the weight of their curiosity pressing against your presence. The same ones who mocked you, dismissed you, called you delusional, Now they are watching you, not openly, not with praise or acknowledgement, but from the shadows. They think you don't notice. They think they're subtle, careful, hidden in the background. But you feel it. The shift in their energy. The way conversations quiet when you speak, not out of dismissal anymore, but out of silent study. The way they linger a little too long when they see your name. The way they scroll through your old posts, rereading the same words they once laughed at. The way they listen, not to argue anymore, but to understand. Because now they need to know. How did you see what they couldn't? How did you know what was coming before it arrived? How did you, the one they looked down on, the one they swore had no direction, end up ahead? They won't admit it. They won't come to you and say, "I should have listened." But their actions betray them. They mimic your words, pretending the thoughts are their own. They copy your insight, try to piece together the wisdom they once threw away, hoping that by some miracle they can still grasp what they missed. But it's too late, because wisdom is not just information. It's the ability to see beyond the illusion. And they have already proven they lack the sight. You are their quiet teacher. The very person they dismissed has become their guide. They study you because they no longer trust themselves. Because every decision they made, the ones they swore were right, the ones they defended with arrogance, led them nowhere. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to call them out, demand recognition, or force them to acknowledge the truth. Because they already know. They wouldn't be watching if they didn't. They wouldn't be studying you in silence. If they didn't realize that somewhere along the way, they got it wrong. They won't clap for you. They won't congratulate you. But that doesn't matter. Because they are learning from you in silence. You were never meant to be validated by them anyway. You never rushed. While they ran after shortcuts, chasing the next trend, jumping from one thing to the next, you stayed grounded. You trusted. What you knew was right. You moved with purpose, not desperation. They mocked you for it, told you that you were too slow, too cautious, too disciplined. While they were busy cutting corners, you were building something real. Look at the difference. The ones who sought quick results, burnt out. The ones who refused to commit, lost. The ones who thought they had found an easier way, now realizing the cost. You've built something unshakable, something they can no longer ignore. They don't want to admit it, but they see it. They see how you've kept your stability while they fell apart. They see how your consistency has set you apart. They see that while they spent their time chasing, grabbing and forcing, you never had to chase anything, because real power attracts. And now, people are noticing. They're watching the way you move, the way you never fold under pressure, the way you stand firm in what you know. They see the difference between your foundation and their instability. And the best part? You never had to prove anything. You never had to beg them to understand, because time speaks for itself, and they can't deny it anymore. They counted on your failure. They expected you to crumble. They were waiting, watching from a distance, convinced that the moment you walked away, you would fall apart. Because in their mind, you needed them. You needed their approval. You needed their validation. You needed their presence to survive. But what happened? You didn't just survive, you thrived, and that terrifies them. Because now they have to ask themselves a question that eats away at their pride. What if I was wrong? What if you were never weak? What if they were never your foundation? What if they weren't the ones holding you up, but the ones holding you back? They don't want to admit it. They don't want to face the fact that while they stayed the same, you evolved. While they wasted their time watching, hoping, waiting for you to break, you built something unshakable. And now, they're the ones struggling. Struggling with the fact that they were never your source of power. Struggling with the realization that you don't miss them. Struggling with the truth that you never looked back. You weren't supposed to rise higher, but you did. And the higher you go, the smaller they feel. Now, they're the ones wondering if they should have stayed close to you. But that's not your concern, because you never needed them, and you never will. You don't need their recognition. You don't need their validation, their apologies, or their approval, but you see it happening. The same ones who mocked your approach, now adopting it. The ones who laughed at your discipline, your intuition, your mindset, now trying to imitate it. They swore you were doing too much, called you obsessive, thought your methods were extreme. They're suddenly moving in silence. They're suddenly practicing the very things they once dismissed. You don't need them to say it out loud, because their actions expose them. They once criticized your work ethic. Now they're trying to match it. They once rolled their eyes at your intuition. Now they're desperately trying to develop their own. They once swore your mindset wouldn't get you far, but now they're studying the very same principles they laughed at. The truth? They always saw your power. They just didn't want to admit they were too blind to understand it at first. It was easier to mock you than to learn from you. Easier to dismiss you than to accept that you were ahead of them. But time is a ruthless teacher. And now they are forced to acknowledge what they once denied. They won't say you were right, but their silence is loud. Their sudden shift in behavior is undeniable. And deep down, they know exactly who they're learning from. You thought you were just speaking, just sharing your insights, your truth, your perspective. But you were planting seeds. Those seeds have taken root. Even the ones who ignored you at first, the ones who dismissed you, doubted you, mocked you, they're coming back. Not to apologize, not to admit they were wrong, but because life proved you right. They remember your words. They remember everything. The warnings they ignored, the wisdom they rejected, the lessons they refused to learn until the consequences forced them to. Now, they're repeating what you said. They speak your words as if they discovered them on their own. They echo your wisdom in conversations, pretending it came from somewhere else. They won't give you credit. But you recognize your own voice in their actions. You see it in the way they approach situations differently now, in the way they guide others using the very lessons they once ridiculed. They may never say, "I learned this from you." But you know the truth. They know it too, and that is the power of your impact. Your words were never wasted. Your wisdom was never in vain. You never needed their credit, because the truth always speaks for itself. They wanted to prove you wrong, not just disagree with you, prove you wrong. They made it a mission to resist everything you said, every warning, every piece of wisdom, every insight. Not because they had better knowledge, not because they saw something you didn't, but because accepting your truth meant admitting they weren't as wise as they believed. So they fought it, ignored it, mocked it. Now they're sitting in the mess they created. Everything they swore would work, crumbling. The choices they defended so aggressively, haunting them. The warnings they rolled their eyes at, now undeniable. And the worst part? They have no one to blame but themselves. Some will never admit it. Their pride won't let them. They will act like nothing is wrong, like they don't see the disaster unfolding around them. They will suffer in silence before they let the words, "You were right," leave their lips. But others? They are looking at you differently now. The arrogance is gone. The dismissive tone has faded, because deep down they know. They know that what they once rejected was the very thing they needed. They know that if they had listened to you, they wouldn't be in this position. They know that your wisdom could have saved them, but they were too stubborn to receive it. And now, they live with that regret. You don't need their apology. You don't need their validation, because watching the truth reveal itself is enough. And they will never doubt you again. The same ones who once laughed at your wisdom, dismissed your insight, rolled their eyes at your words. Now they are standing on shaky ground. Their confidence is slipping, their certainty is cracking, because they were so sure they had it all figured out. They're watching everything they built on false beliefs fall apart. And meanwhile, you stand firm. Because you never needed outside validation. You never needed people to believe in you for the truth to remain true. The very ones who rejected you are looking to you for direction. The thinkers, the seekers, the ones who once hesitated to stand by you, now they're drawn to your presence because you were never just speaking, you were leading, and now they're starting to see it. What was once ridiculed is now respected. What was once ignored is now being embraced. What was once fought against is now the very thing people are searching for. You never had to prove yourself. You never had to convince them. Because the truth always reveals itself in time. And now the ones who see it are gathering around you, not because you forced them to, not because you begged for their attention, but because real leadership doesn't chase, it attracts. You don't look back. You don't need their apology. You don't need their validation, because you already know what you carry. While they sit in regret, in disbelief, in confusion, you rise. They wanted to forget. They wanted to erase the fact that you saw what they couldn't, knew what they refused to accept. But the truth? It won't let them. Your words linger in their minds. Your presence is imprinted in their memories. They may never admit it, but they will never forget that you were right. You move differently now. Lighter, sharper, unshakable. Because you were never waiting for them to understand. They had their chance. You are already ahead. Have you noticed the shift? Have you seen people quietly returning to your wisdom after dismissing it? Let them know the truth is never forgotten.